The Aurora is one of Subnautica's most iconic vehicles. Not only is she the doomed ship you rode in on, but she also acts as the backdrop for most of your adventure. Lost in the seas or up on land, the unmoving Aurora acts as a constant in an ever-changing ocean, acting as a massive radioactive homing beacon to help you figure out where you are. The Aurora was constructed by the Aletho Corporation and was hot off the assembly line just prior to the start of Subnautica. The Aurora was a long-range capital ship designed to push the envelope of human exploration into the deepest reaches of space. The ship was around 1,280 metres long and 500 metres tall, and was fitted with the latest scanning and long-range communication equipment in order to send messages back home. The ship's crew consisted of 157 individuals, and of this, 23 were members of the command team, who were responsible for charting the ship's route through space. To complement them, the Aurora was outfitted with 85 engineers and 40 support crew to maintain the day-to-day running of the ship and complete specialist tasks. The final 9 crew members were passengers with no specific jobs, but likely had a commercial or business interest in being on board. The Aurora's mission was to use its dark matter ion drive to travel from a dock at the edge of Aurora territory and make hundreds of phase gate jumps through charted systems to the edge of known space. This trip would take 3 months, and after arriving at the current limit of human expansion, the ship would plot a route through the Aradni Arm, a journey that would take another 18 months. On arrival, an elite team of engineers would be deployed to begin the construction of a phase gate in the system, a 6-month construction process that would allow quick travel to the area for the small cost of a multi-trillion credit investment from Aurora. But this was not some noble goal for the betterment of humanity. Oh no, this was all about cold hard cash. The Aurora Corporation currently runs 9% of all phase gates in the galaxy, and if the Aurora's mission was successful, the company would have outmaneuvered a group of Mongolian corporations also operating in the region, allowing Aurora to set up outposts and mines in the area to boost its profits. But the ship also had another, much more secret mission, which the majority of the crew were completely unaware of. 13 months into its journey through the Aradni Arm, the Aurora would pass through a solar system designated as 4546, and the second planet in this system, 4546b, was the last known location of a ship that had mysteriously vanished without a trace almost a decade prior. This Mongolian vessel was known as the Degassi and was carrying a high-ranking Mongolian chief. 13 months into its voyage, the Aurora was due to perform a slingshot maneuver around the planet in order to gain additional speed, and this would bring the ship within range of the Degassi's last known location. The Aurora was to use its advanced scanning equipment and long-range communications relay to locate and rescue any surviving members of the Degassi crew, in order to improve Aurора's diplomatic relations with the Mongolian councils. For this mission, the Aurora was equipped with additional aquatic and all-terrain vehicles, which would come in very useful later on, although maybe not quite for their original purpose. When undertaking its gravity slingshot maneuver around 4546b, the Aurora came in range of the Quarantine Enforcement Platform, a weapon on the planet's surface created by an alien race known as the Architects. Unknown to the curious humans, a disease was ravaging the planet below, a bacteria so deadly that it could never be allowed to escape, so any ships approaching or leaving the area had to be destroyed. The weapon unleashed a large green torrent of energy, but the Aurora wasn't going down without a fight, and actually survived the initial blast from the alien cannon. The ship was struck on the right-hand side, causing catastrophic damage to the hull and destroying many, if not all, of the life pods contained on this side of the ship. Luckily for the remaining members of the crew, the 25 life pods on the left side of the ship were mostly unaffected and were still able to be launched. This is where Subnautica begins, and as Riley hurtles towards the planet below, all he can do is watch in horror as his former home is struck by a second blast from the enforcement platform, bringing the already wounded beast to the ground. As the ship crashed, the weight of its hull gouged the land beneath, creating the small sandy islands on which it now rests and littering the area with debris and metal fragments. It's unknown what the crash zone looked like before the Aurora arrived, but the area is now surrounded by a number of Reapers, either attracted to the damaged ship by the prospect of food, or it's possible they even lived there prior to the crash. As the dust settles, the Aurora remains relatively intact, at least in the parts visible to us, but inside this sleepy giant rests one last rage against the planet on which it's now stranded. From its first day on 4546b, radiation levels begin to rise in the area around the crash site. Triggered by damage to the Aurora's engine, this radiation can be detected up to 675 meters away from the engine room. By day 3, the Aurora's engine reaches a critical state, and on the 4th and final day, the ship's fury is unleashed. A huge explosion rips through the vessel, creating large holes in the hull and peeling back the ship's bridge. This causes massive levels of radiation to surge through the surrounding area, causing the radiation field to grow to 950 meters. But the local wildlife's loss is your gain, and after equipping a radiation suit for protection, you now have a way inside the doomed vessel. But you should be careful, as the PDA warns that the nearby creatures have human tissue in their digestive tracts, suggesting that many of the crash's victims have been consumed by the bleeders and cave crawlers that now stalk the ship's twisted frame. Access to the ship is granted by two doors, one on the lower level blocked by boxes and debris, and one on the higher level blocked by fire. Heading through the lower entrance, the first room of note is the laboratory. Accessed using a code lock, the room contains a number of pieces of scientific equipment and the blueprint for the repulsion cannon. Heading back the way you came and cutting through a nearby door takes you to a strange room that contains the Aurora's black box data. This gives detailed information about the crash and tells of how Aletho had been alerted to the disaster before the ship's monitoring equipment stopped working. It notes that after 8 hours, life signs of only one person can be detected, which is Riley. Continuing on, you swim through the bows of the ship, passing through masses of pipes and exposed electronics, surfacing in the prawn bay. This area contains a number of damaged prawn suits, with them hanging from the ceiling on loading racks and positioned in storage bays. Clearing and ascending the stairs leads to the living quarters. This area contains a storage room on the right and a canteen on the left. The canteen is quite warm at this time of year, with the food getting extra cooked from all the fire loose in the room. A sign on one of the walls lists what was on the menu during the day of the crash, and you might notice that none of these are desserts, as a nearby PDA mentions that an accident in Cargo Bay 3 using a repulsion cannon had accidentally jettisoned all of the desserts apart from dried fruit and nuts into space. Further exploration of the living quarters reveals communal cabins for crew members containing small beds and storage lockers. At the end of the hallway sits the captain's quarters, where you can find the captain's log, which, ironically, appears to be a Craig McGill simulator game rather than anything serious. You might remember Craig as being the guy who
crash landed in the acid swamps of Boreal 9, fought off the Wreckage kidney poachers, and hijacked a tame Star Wars.
Also in this room is the data terminal containing the Aurora's last recorded transmission, where the captain calls for help and reports that the ship is going down. Aletho responds by sending through the blueprint for the Neptune escape rocket, which is needed to get off the planet. This room also contains the Aurora miniature and poster, which will make nice additions to your base. Heading back to the prawn bay and passing through an unpowered door will take you to the locker room. This room has some damaged lockers containing useful loot such as batteries and first aid kits. Cutting your way through another door will bring you to a junction. Moving forward takes you to the Seamoth bay, and conducting some quick repairs to the electrics, you can enter a small room with some damaged Seamoths. You can also find a PDA entry that shows someone was playing a deserted island survival game, which, considering the circumstances, was probably time well spent. Turning around, you find a corridor which leads to the drive room. The drive room contains the ship's engine, which has 4 large reactors. These reactors are covered in large thick metal shells with small breaches that are causing the radiation that covers the surrounding area. The PDA states that the radiation in this area is at the maximum tolerable level for your radiation suit. These breaches can be repaired using the repair tool, and once this is done, after 3 in-game days, the radiation will be completely removed from the area. Heading back to the junction from which you came, you will find yourself ascending into Cargo Bay 3. This room is full of storage boxes and forklift trucks used to carry the ship's essential supplies. The PDA tells us that the Aurora had 400 meters of storage space for phase gate construction, so it's possible that some of those materials are in these boxes. Heading up the stairs in the back of the room will take you towards the administration office. This small room contains a couple of small desks and a data terminal covering the Aurora's launch and mission. Leaving the office, we reach the Aurora's second entrance, having visited all the areas we have access to, although we know from the PDA that the ship had a lot more facilities that we either can't access or are destroyed in the crash. These include a cinema, VR suites, an anti-gravity gym, a robotics bay, a scanner room, and several leisure decks with various canteens and airlocks. During the game's development, the Aurora was originally a 2D image with a different design. Later on, this image was updated to the design we know today, but it was still flat and unreachable in-game. Once Subnautica was released in early access, the ship finally became 3D, and later became explorable as part of the crash site update. Early concept art for the Aurora contained lots of weird and wacky designs for the ship. Would you have preferred any of these over the final one we got? Personally, I like this one with the 2 engine structures. During the development process, the ship's purpose on 4546b also changed a number of times, with it previously being a terraforming vessel and then a mining vessel before becoming a long-range capital ship sent to create a phase gate. Surprisingly, during the game's intro cinematic, the site we see of the Aurora is not actually a 3D model, but a very large version of the Aurora poster found in the captain's quarters. The Aurora's explosion is also not a set in-game event, and is actually semi-random. randomised, so the ship will never explode at exactly the same time on each playthrough, and can be as early as day 3 or as late as the start of day 5. Another interesting detail is that many of the Aurora's lockers contain a small picture of a woman, and this is actually unused concept art for an alternative protagonist for the game who never saw the light of day. Whoa, I think this thing is still falling apart. If you want to get out of here before it collapses, you'll need to watch this video next all about Subnautica's Neptune escape rocket, otherwise we might be stuck here forever. And special thanks to my patrons, Asmodeus Mateus, Graham DeLoye, Baron Windy, and Xander Kohler for making this video possible.